The Black Lives Matter movement was established to dilute dehumanization and to call action toward racism and brutality. It was created in the year of 2012 after Trayvon Martin was killed by a white man named George Zimmerman. Trayvon Martin was only 17 years old when he was killed. It was a late night. Martin was walking by with a large hoodie on, sweatpants, and Nike athletic sneakers. In his large hoodie, Martin was carrying a soda can and a packet of Skittles. George Zimmerman was sitting in a car while Martin was walking out of the shop where he bought his food items. Zimmerman imagined that Martin was a threat to him and other people in the community, so he decided to call the police, saying that there was a suspicious person walking around late that night. The police officer told Zimmerman to remain in his car until dispatch got to his general location. Zimmerman didn't follow the officer's instructions, so he decided to get out of his car and approach Trayvon. Trayvon and Zimmerman got into a physical fight when Zimmerman pulled out a knife and shot Trayvon. Trayvon Martin was only 17 years old when he was killed. This murder happened from ignorance. This sparked a national controversy on racial profiling in the white and black communities. People were outraged with the situation. Individuals in the black community started a nonprofit organization called Black Lives Matter. The idea isn't to disregard other races and show that black people are better. It is simply to provide assurance to the black community that respect, dignity, justice, and equality should always be a part of their lifestyle. The Black Lives Matter platform states, "Black humanity and dignity requires black political will and power. Despite constant exploitation and perpetual oppression, black people have bravely and brilliantly been the driving force pushing the U.S. towards the ideals it articulates, but has never achieved. In recent years, we have taken to the streets, launched massive campaigns, and impacted elections. But our elected leaders have failed to address the legitimate demands for our movement. We can no longer wait. We believe in elevating the experience and leadership of the most marginalized black people, included not limited to those who are women, queer, trans, femmes, gender nonconforming, Muslim. It is our hope that by working together to create and amplify a shared agenda, we can continue to move towards a world in which the full humanity and dignity of all people is recognized." The organization brought a voice in the black community. They took into their own hands to stand up and make a difference across the United States. In the late 1800s, the United States had a black activist and former slave named Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass traveled around the United States and Europe to talk about his experiences with slavery and how the injustices of it made him become a stronger man. His purpose was to reach out to the black and white abolitionists to stand by his side and to understand how the antebellum South was causing destruction for African Americans. Douglass focuses on the idea of social justice, which provides every individual personal rights and unconditional respect. In this case, African American slaves were divided. They were beaten, overworked, underfed, not cared for, and etc. Frederick Douglass fought to become a free man because he was sick of the lack of justice and equity for himself and the rest of the slaves. Douglass was initially the original star of the Black Lives Matter movement. Frederick Douglass gave an outstanding speech called "The Meaning of July 4th for the Negro." He gave his speech on the 4th of July in 1860. Is it not astonishing that, while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for the life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men, and so on. Frederick Douglass was stating that he didn't agree with the celebration of July 4th because all slaves were suffering to make America great for others, but not themselves. He discusses how many white individuals have this perspective that everyone has the right to freedom. However, blacks are not granted this right because they are owned by their masters. Slaves didn't have any rights. They were not allowed to speak up for themselves. Douglass breaks the barrier between realism and fantasy. The truth was that 4th of July celebrations were only relevant toward white Americans because they had rights and were able to thank the Founding Fathers for their freedom. The organization Black Lives Matter and Frederick Douglass connect with each other because they are both trying to promote and devise a plan for equal opportunities and justice within the Black community. As an African American young woman, I think that Black Lives Matter has made great progress in terms of placing stepping stones on the pathway to equity, equality, and stopping violence. Douglass and Black Americans throughout history brought the value of restorative justice to American culture. Furthermore, the United States still has a long way to go for full freedom and equity for the Black community. There is still a mass measure of ignorance and hatred towards the Black community, which constructs a great deal of controversy. To have full success, we need full participation with all Americans, so that we can live by our word saying, all men are created equal.